So welcome everybody. Today we will talk about process mining and BPM. So we are with Jason Bloomberg, president of analyst firm Intelix, and Delphine Qual, evangelist and community manager at Bonita Soft.
All right, thank you very much. So a bit about me. I'm president of Intelix. We're an analyst firm focusing on digital transformation. I also write for various publications, and my last book, a few years old now, The Agile Architecture Revolution, and we also published the Agile Digital Transformation Roadmap poster, and I'll have the URL of that at the end of my talk. So let's start at the beginning with this notion of a business process. And if you go back in history and think about how businesses were run, during the Industrial Revolution and before, they didn't really have this notion of a process. It really came about with Frederick Winslow Taylor, early in the 20th century, who thought through essentially what was called scientific management. So he broke down management of businesses of the day, which were essentially industrial companies. So like think about a factory, for example. He separated the notion of managers from workers, where managers defined tasks and then workers executed tasks. So that industrial context where you have the workers, they're assembling something and they're conducting tasks as assigned by managers, that is where this notion of a business process came from, right? So if you think about what a business process is, it still has this industrial flavor to it, for better or worse, even though today's businesses are really very different from the sorts of businesses that Taylor was talking about. So if you think about what's changed over the years, the sorts of processes we're likely to talk about today are more likely to be dynamic. It's less about some sort of assembly line where every item comes off the same. It's more about dealing with information. It's more about knowledge workers adding value by how they interact with other people and how they interact with information on a day-to-day basis. That kind of process tends to be more dynamic than the industrial assembly line model that Taylor was thinking about. In terms of the relationship between management and workers, it's not black and white anymore. Obviously, we still have hierarchical organizations, so we still have management, but the principles of management have evolved quite a bit. It's much more likely to be collaborative, and good managers delegate to their reports, so that in many cases, those are the people who are now making the decisions about how processes are to be run. Right? It's not the managers who are the experts in the processes. It's usually the people who are in the trenches executing the tasks. So this is a key part of the story as well. This notion of workers that Taylor was talking about is starting to break down. Obviously, some industries you still have a clear definition of a worker, but now because they're becoming increasingly empowered and taking responsibility for their own actions, then they're more likely to be serving in the role of managers to an increasingly extent. So if you think about all of these changes to the nature of businesses today, it's really very different from Taylor's vision of how processes are supposed to work. So along comes this technology, business process management. Actually, it predates the technology. Essentially, what does an organization need to do to define and manage their processes? That led to various technologies in the 1990s and 2000s. BPM could stand for business process management, could stand for business process modeling. Some of these products really were focusing on the modeling, right? Drawing flow charts that represented processes. Others now tried to manage those processes, either by taking the visual model and essentially trying to execute the process as defined in the model. And so you have this notion of process execution that the BPM tools, BPM systems introduced to the business process discussion. So we still have, though, this rigid sequence of tasks notion that dates all the way back to Winslow Taylor, right? That a process, we can define it, it has a starting point, it has an ending point, it's a sequence of tasks, and then maybe we can automate some of the tasks, and that will get efficiencies and higher productivity. So it becomes now a method for automating a sequence of tasks where we still have humans involved. Typically, rarely do we have a sequence of tasks where no people are involved and it's 100% automated. But automation nevertheless is a key motivation for a lot of these products. But if you think about what it takes to automate many of these knowledge-centric, data-centric, knowledge worker type processes, there are a number of different challenges, right? It's one thing to get an industrial robot to assemble a vehicle. It's quite another to automate, say, the interacting with a customer on the phone, right? How do you support a call center rep with technology? Well, it's automation now provides support, but it's really a human interaction based process. So we have automation challenges, and we also have integration challenges, because often the automation challenge boils down to connecting to different applications, maybe calling functions via API calls, maybe interacting with legacy applications now via, say, robotic process automation or other technologies. So we have all of these different things we want to assemble together, all these different applications or database calls or other types of software-based interactions, and we have to integrate our BPM tool with all of these different products, and that has always led to problems. So in many cases, this whole BPM process bogged down in complexity, where the model, the visual representation of the process may not be complete, right? It's a room full of people thinking about how a process might be under ideal conditions, but not how it really runs. It might leave out steps or leave out error conditions or all sorts of other issues, or just unusual circumstances that may impact a process. So in many cases, BPM over the last, over the 90s and 2000s, so we're talking sort of the earlier generation, overpromised and underdelivered. So one area that helped resolve some of these issues was case management. It's essentially an outgrowth of business process management, where there was an understanding that various events could kick off steps in a process. So the classic example is that call center, let's say you have a 911 operator. So they get a call, and based upon what the person says, they might choose one of many different actions, and there may be a sequence of steps based upon interactions with the caller. That would be a case management scenario. So it deals better with human interactions, deals better with diversity of different possible scenarios, but still it can be bogged down in complexity and often doesn't cover all of the scenarios. So you still have challenges with these kinds of technologies. So moving on, if we can move on here. It's slow, there we are, okay. Okay, so one of the challenges now with BPM is getting information about what's really going on, right? So it's one thing to say we're going to integrate these different applications together so that we can execute a sequence of tasks, but we need to know whether it's working properly. We need to know whether it's meeting any sort of goals set out for the process. It might be a service level, right? Call center reps have to respond in a certain amount of time. If you have some sort of factory process, you want to complete a certain number of items with certain quality requirements. There's a whole lot of information that you might want to know about a process. But the traditional BPM tools were challenged with process visibility, right? You don't necessarily have a proactive way of getting information about what's going on in the process. And the more you automate, the worse it gets, right? Because if your people are involved, at least the people have visibility into what they're doing. They see on the screen, okay, here's a task for me to do, I'll do it. And so there's information that way. But the more you automate, it becomes now invisible to the people interacting with the process. So what do? Well, you have some information at hand, and it's what we might call data exhaust. So data exhaust is essentially the information that applications essentially throw off as part of their normal operation. So you typically log files. So you think about an application that's running, it will create a log file that operations people might look at to see if the application is behaving properly. And now we can look at those log files and other types of information coming off of the various applications that we have assembled into these processes and get some visibility into what's going on. But those log files weren't created by the application designer for this purpose, right? And that's part of why we use the word exhaust. I mean, exhaust is a waste product, right? It's like, this isn't what we intend, you know, the goal of a car isn't to create exhaust, right? that's not the point of the car, right? So it's a side effect of the logging capability that applications and other pieces of software might give you. So moving on again. There we are. So, went too far. Okay, here we are. So, so what do we do with this data exhaust, these log files? Well, we can mine them. And this word mining, so we're talking about process mining, and the word mining is the same word we had for data mining. So it's a metaphor that we've had for many years about, you know, squeezing insights out of quantities of data. And so we've been doing data mining for many years, and now we can apply it to these to this data exhaust and get some visibility into what's going on with the processes. We could also connect these processes and their log files that they generate to a business activity monitoring solution, which essentially takes data feeds and provides you know, dashboards and other insights and, you know, metrics into the data that is being fed to the BAM tool. But there's challenges with these as well. And again, we're still talking about technologies from the 2000s. So this is also still part of the history. But you have to integrate these BAM tools, the BAM tools, with the various data sources. That can be a challenge. You can only feed them so much data before they tend to bog down, right? They weren't designed for big data. This is before big data came along, so they may have scalability issues. You're looking at this data exhaust, it doesn't necessarily give you all the information you need. So it could be incomplete. And once you have the dashboards, you may have difficulty interpreting them or connecting them to what's really important to the business, the key performance indicators or KPIs. So the business might be wondering, well, you know, are our customers happy with what's going on, you know, in this part of the business? And the dashboard might give some, you know, sort of, you know, metrics that are hard to convert into that, you know, are we making enough money? Are the customers happy? The sort of KPIs that executives focus on. So, well, what do we do about all this? We wait for the slide to advance. And, there we are. Okay, so some of the realities with process mining as it's done today. One of the challenges is that we have this process model, right? You think of the diagram with the boxes and the lines, and that model is now part of the instructions for the BPM platform itself. So the model is essentially represents the logic of the process that is going to be followed. But the model isn't necessarily how the process actually runs, right? Because the model is often incomplete. The software may do other things that are not part of that visual model. And there are all the exceptions and human interactions that may not be part of what the software is actually automating. The models may be out of date. They're typically incomplete. They don't deal with all of these special conditions and other challenges. So we could improve the models, but if you're focusing your BPM efforts on improving the models, that tends to bog down over time, right? You can only achieve so much accuracy out of models as they get increasingly complex. And the more complex it is, the harder it is to ensure the model represents the processes as they actually run and how you actually want them to run. So the model, you can look at the model, but it won't tell you what you need to know. What process mining does is helps fill the gap, right? It's only looking at what's actually going on with the applications that are being coordinated or orchestrated by the BPM tool. So that can give you better information than what the model itself is giving you. So you look at the model to get an idea of what's going on in terms of the steps that you're expecting to take place or what maybe is the ideal, but the process mining gives you visibility into what is actually going on. So Moving to the next slide. So if you look at process mining, there's three core priorities that you want to focus on. The first is sort of the obvious one, discovery, right? You have to connect the log data or other data exhaust so you want to the process mining tool, so you get visibility into what's actually going on, right? This is real-time data coming from these applications. So you're looking at real-time information about what's going on. So you have to monitor them. Then you have to be smart about what you do with this information. You have to do real-time conformance checks. That is, what is the process supposed to be doing? What is it actually doing? Is there a disconnect between those two things? You can see that now in real time, and if you is a problem, you want to uncover the reason, right? What is the underlying cause of the problem? Is it a software issue? Is it infrastructure issue like a slow network? Is it a human issue, right? Somebody's not doing their job properly, or maybe maybe an approval step is being skipped because the person who's supposed to be doing it is out of the office today, something like that. So you have to drill down and figure out what the problem is. And then of course you want a continuous improvement feedback cycle, right? So you want to be able to enhance and improve your process models in order to improve the processes based upon the information you get from the processes as they're actually running. So as you run into issues, you improve the model, that improves how the software executes the process, and you want to have an ongoing iterative, continuous improvement cycle. So keep in mind as well that we want to know what's going on in real time. So data exhaust comes off of the applications, but once we're looking at it, it's essentially out of date. It's not telling us what's going on right now. It's telling us what's going on when the log records were actually written. So just how real time we can actually be will depend upon the process mining technology. So ideally you want to look beyond the data just in the log files. You want additional information, and you want to be proactive with information about the performance of the processes, no matter how dynamic the processes are. And you want to give the business the information they need to understand what they need to understand in terms of the business impacts, the KPIs of the processes. So this is where process performance mining comes in. It's an improvement on process mining that only looks at the log files, but actually interacts with the process execution itself in order to get better information that is more useful to the business. So that is essentially where I hand off the discussion. Just to transition to Delphine, here's my email address, Twitter handle. If you want to copy the poster, it's a free download at agiledigitaltransformation.com. So Delphine, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jason. Hi, everyone. Let me introduce myself quickly. I'm Delphine. I've been working at Bonita for the last 6 years, so I know pretty well BPM tools and all the BPM context and challenges Jason has been talking about right now. And I'm in the adoption team of Bonita Soft. Today, the objective of my presentation is really to talk about process performance mining with Bonita and show you how we can mix process mining and BPM for intelligent continuous improvements. So I will start with a kind of a concept because, as Jason just said, BPM can look rigid. BPM is, we know, it's you have a start, an end. Jason already said that. You know each step of the process, and you have to define them. But it still provides reliable features and values with a constant goal, which is continuous improvement. So with BPM, the goal can be to reinvent the existing business processes or eventually create new business opportunities through what? Through formalization, through standardization, automation, digitization, traceability, and monitoring. So you have everything in that, but that's true that even if you have continuous improvement, sometimes you can still yet you can still have issues because of a lack of anticipation. That's what Jason was saying. If you can't anticipate, for example, if you can't anticipate a high volume of activity during a short period, you will have bottlenecks, which can have as a consequence delays or lack of quality. But if we look a bit deeper into BPM fundamentals, we can see that today we have everything to anticipate thanks to BPM, because the process execution generates logs and archives. You have a determined path that you can analyze and then improve. And you also have a lot of data to analyze, so a lot of data that can help you make decisions. And that's what we were thinking in Bonita Soft when we were working on our BPM application, and we thought, okay, how we can go further and use Bonita not only as a BPM tool, but also as a continuous improvement tool. So if we come back to today, what we can do today, the current data analysis tools are business activity monitoring, BAM, and business intelligence. They are based on reporting and descriptive statistics based on data and KPIs, where the human can visualize and monitor them. So this analysis is based on data from the past performance, and to make decisions and to improve, it's based on human deduction only. So you are going to be on a corrective way of improving. So you can think, do you have enough data? Is it the relevant data? Are we using the relevant KPIs? That's today's challenges when you work with BAM or business intelligence tools. What we will need to do is try to predict. So for that, we have been investigating data mining algorithm adapted to processes, and this is process mining presented by Jason just before. So at Bonita Software, what we wanted to do is to use those predictive data to be able to apply them in an operational context in real time. So today, if you use data mining algorithm adapted to processes, you can anticipate some types of future data. And that's what I am going to illustrate now. You work on value and anticipation by analyzing data from the past to make decisions and take actions in the future. But you will tell me, but yeah, okay, that's fine, but this is theory. How does it work? In Bonita Soft, we decided to mix process mining and BPM. How? With a method, with a tool, which is Bonita Intelligent Continuous Improvement, and with all the data that are available when you execute processes. So our choice for the process mining implementation in our application is operational business processes improvement. Jason told you just before about 3 different models. You have discovery, which will use logs to define processes. You have conformance checking, where you can check the conformance of the model with the reality. But for us, it was not relevant enough, because we wanted to have a model as close as possible from the reality and the use cases our customers was facing. So thanks to process mining algorithm, the process execution will be used as a transition system, which means that you will be able to analyze each step of the process. You can monitor and analyze data on each trace of the process. All archived cases are used. When you execute a case, you have a lot of data very useful, such as gateways, tasks, connectors, actors, assignees, issues, for example, if a task is failing, errors, and this data can be used and collected to help you making decisions. Then you have a prediction of the duration that can be computed for each open case. But that's not our first goal, because we decided to predict cases and dates to avoid delays first. Why? Because we wanted to tackle first the prediction that were the most important for our customers. Our customers, they think SLAs. They have a level of service, and one of the main point and the main pain points as well are deadlines, are SLAs. So that's why we started to work first with this goal, and we built our solution, Bonita Intelligent Continuous Improvement, based on that. Now let me tell you a bit about Bonita Intelligent Continuous Improvement. How we mixed and we plugged process mining tool with a BPM tool. As you can see here, you have Bonita platform, and here you have what we call BC, our process intelligent continuous improvement platform. The mix of both is mainly done for Dave, our Bonita developer, and Omar, the operation manager, because they will need it to configure, improve, and monitor. So how does it work? Here you have a Bonita database with all the information about archived cases. We are going to extract all the data from the archived cases, pull it using Elasticsearch, and then inject that in the production model with a goal. I mean, first of all, you have to define a goal, so an SLA, and then the production model will work on that. What is interesting is that when you plug Bonita Intelligent Continuous Improvement for the first time, you can already use all the data you already had in your Bonita database, and then you don't have to wait too much time before being able to analyze and monitor it. Then the extraction will be incremental, which means that the algorithm will be learning constantly, and it will be even more precise every day, which is also important, because if the model is not learning, you will still have issues, and even if you have exhaust data, you won't be able to make the right decision because you won't have the right KPIs to do it. Then it goes back to Bonita platform, and here we have built two applications. One is to configure the monitoring, the model, the processes where it will be applied, and the information we want to show. And the other one will be used by the operation manager to monitor and check that everything, what's going on, to make decisions. I will illustrate quickly with a concrete example and a first process we implemented. Our use case is about loan management in banking area. Why we chose this example? Because we have lots of customers that are in the banking and insurance area, and that's really a very big competitive advantage to be able to deliver a loan on time, because then you are the first one, you have traceability, your customers are happy, and they are going to accept your offer and stay in the bank. So here, just to show you quickly, that's a part of the process that has been built for Bonita Intelligent Continuous Improvement. I won't go into details in this slide, but I wanted to emphasize and to just to tell you about here this I would say bottleneck. you see that you have the validate loan application, and then you have a kind of you have a gateway and a second gateway where you need to make decisions. But you have to take those decisions to avoid bottleneck and make sure that your customers, for example, will have their loan ready and validated in 2 days. But how to monitor that and take the best choice? You can do that with a human, but it will never be that precise. So we try to augment the human using process mining to make sure they can make the right decision, improve it, and have happy customers then. So I am the operation manager. I need to make my decision and make the best choice. How can I do that? We have two objectives here. The first one can be short term. I want to fix. I need to make sure that when I have a missed SLA, I can predict if it will be missed to take short-term actions, such as, for example, we are in a week where we have lots of cases, lots of loans to validate, and we have someone sick. I need to make sure I can hire someone for 1 or 2 weeks just to make sure we can validate them and we won't have delays. But you can also decide to have a long-term loop and improve your process. For that, you can monitor and scan the archives to find areas for improvement, especially in your process. That can be, for example, add a validation step or remove one, because sometimes a validator can be a bottleneck as well. Here you can see an example of screens that you have in Bonita Intelligent Continuous Improvement that will help you make those decisions. They are responsive, so you can see them in your office, but also when you are traveling, wherever you want, on your mobile or your computer. Here you can see that you have the predicted late list. I have defined a target duration of 140 days to retrieve the data and to launch the process mining model. And I can see there that I still have, for this example, I still have 1 day and 17 hours to finish the process, but I can see that it's kind of tricky because I have only 14% of chance to reach the target, which is not that good. And here we can see that as it's already 0%, we are sure they will be late. Here you can find the late list, where then you can see number of days late, that they are late since 40 days or 50 days, which gives you a good indication and can help you as well change and improve things. And here you have the list of processes that should be on time with the prediction and the percentage of chance to be on time. On this second screen, it's a bit different. It's a kind of BI tool where you are going to analyze data to support your decisions and long-term improvements. You can see the number of cases started by month and by status. Here you don't see late cases, but it's just because I could not find a screen where you have them, but sometimes you have 30% red, 20% yellow, and the rest in green. And you have all the indications on your cases. And here, for example, you can see the distribution of the case duration. This information will be useful to Omar, our operation manager, because then he will find also the way to improve the process, and he will get back to our developer to say, okay, maybe we could change it. So if we talk about the value of having Bonita Continuous Intelligent Improvement combined with Bonita, so having process mining tool combined with BPM, it's because this is really a perfect solution if you have execution duration which is long. And that's often the case. In the real time, we often see processes, and especially when you are talking about core business processes that are long. Also, it will be a kind of collaboration between human and the machine, because we are not replacing the human, we are just augmenting the employee decision making through artificial intelligence algorithm. Then we know that if you want to work on data science, you will need specific skills. Without BC, you would have to hire someone with those skills, and they are very rare and very expensive. Here, you can leverage artificial intelligence without specific skills. Then, something important as well, you can take actions directly in the production environment, and you don't have especially to edit the process, change it, deploy a new release. You can have short-term actions in production, and then you will work on the long-term actions on the process directly, which is very useful if you want to have short improvement loops. As I already said when I show you the architecture slide, also your predictions will be available a couple hours after deployment because you plug directly the BC module to your Bonita database. So that's useful as well if you want. You don't have to wait for months before starting your improvements. Now what's next? What's next? Now for the next versions, because it was only a first step and we want to stay humble, we defined a first goal, which was the SLA, to see how it worked, if our model was relevant. Now we want to go further because we see that it works and we really have ideas to make it even better. So first of all, we want to work on statistics on task execution and not only cases and processes. We want to help supporting decision on the best task assignment, collecting data not only from the process, but also from the business data. Also something that is quite fun and graphical, you can see it at the right of the side. We would like to implement in the next versions heat maps on process execution that will help you detect flows. Other predictions, for example, because we could think about other ideas, could be about the duration. So make sure that we give information about the duration, but also, for example, end of the trace for each case to make sure you have a better quality of service, or work on technical errors to have a robust platform and help the backup team improve the performance as well. There are ideas, there are projects we are already working on for our next version and that are in our roadmap. So of course, as soon as some of it is already ready, we are going to organize a new presentation so that you can follow on this subject.
Okay, well, thank you very much for attending this webinar. Thank you, Delphine and Jason, for this really nice presentation. And I hope to see you next time for our next webinar. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you all.